All right, I'm going to start up. You've gotten two emails from me today. The second one showed you this, which was the URL for this. And again, this is what I base mine off of. I'm not claiming, that mine's better than his. His is probably much better, and it shows a few things that I didn't show. But I'm going to hit the sound on this and mute it. But what he does do in here is so this is at the top, so you can see as he's working his way through here, this is where I put the information about the sandwiches and whatever it was, sandwiches and, etc. And then down here where he has videos, that's where I had the members of the family. And so you can see it. All right. And he gives you the entire thing of his code too. All right. Now, let's say that you look at that and you're like, okay, I get it. Okay, but it doesn't really help me all that much. Well, there's another one. Now, this is a guy, I may or may not have mentioned this guy to you. If I did or did not, but there's a guy out there, his name is Brad Traversy, and he owns a company called Traversy Media. The interesting thing about the guy is he used to be a drug addict, and he cleaned himself up. And the guy is, in my mind, he's brilliant. He can sit there and learn something in a day or two and then make a video on it. You think he's been using it for years. All right. I have corresponded with him, but it's all been electronic. He's out of Boston. All right. I would love to meet the guy someday. I also love to go to Boston sometime. But, I'm not saying that will or will not ever happen. I'm actually one of his patrons. So in other words, I pay him $10 a month. I just give him $120 a year. And whenever he releases new courses, I get them for free. You can be a patron with as little as $1 a month, but I don't know what you get for that. I have no idea. Now he puts a lot of his courses are on something. I think I've mentioned this to you too. I take a lot of courses online at a thing called udemy.com. You don't ever have to go out there and do anything with it. All right, but for instance, if I go in here and I type in Bootstrap 5 and hit enter, it's going to show me. And Bootstrap 5 is actually pretty new, so there'll be some hits. And now you look at these, you're like, yeah, Jeff, $90? What they typically do is about once or twice a month is they make all these courses either $10.99 or $12.99. That's when I buy them. I would never pay anything like that. Come on. And notice here he's got Bootstrap 4, so this is older, from scratch with 5 projects rather. And he gives you all the source code, etc. for it. Now, I'm not saying you ever have to go out there, but if you're looking for more than you think you're getting here, it might be something that you'd want to consider. So again, I sent you this, and as I said, this is Bootstrap. This is what it's called, Bootstrap 5 tutorial, build a responsive website. It's 23 minutes long, and it's about a year old. So it's still fairly recent, fairly relevant. When you look at some of the stuff that's out there for free, if it's been out there for a few months, now notice we're on version 5.1, but before they had 5.1, here's a surprise, they had 5.0. But before they had 5.0, they had what was called Beta 5, which meant it wasn't released yet, but you could still look at it and work with it. So some of the really good videos I've seen work with Beta 5, and some stuff has changed since then. All right. The other thing, just so you know that I sent you this morning, was I sent you the images that you're going to need for this Alfanos thing that we're going to create as a class in just about 10 or 15 minutes. All right. So I'm going to jump back over to here, and I don't want to talk about all of these. We went through the getting started, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore. There's some other stuff I didn't cover in here, but I think I've hit the most important stuff. Customize, that's, I think, in my opinion, that's when you've been doing this for a while. So if you wanted to learn about Sass and CSS variables, etc., you could read that. I wouldn't recommend doing that until you really have a comfort level with this. All right. The layout. I am going to talk about this. This is important. First thing that's in here is breakpoints. And guess what? You've seen these already. These are the breakpoint numbers that they use. So if you've got an extra small device, it's considered to be less than 576 pixels. If you've got a small device, which is most phones, it's greater than or equal to 576 pixels and less than 768 pixels. If you've got a tablet, that's medium. that's greater than or equal to 768 pixels and less than 992 pixels. The large, that's a typical desktop or laptop. That's greater than or equal to 992 pixels and less than 1200 pixels. Extra large typically is if you got one of those really big monitors that you can buy, and the extra large is actually fairly new, and that's if you're going to be going on a projector or something like that. All right. But the point is, when you're working with these breakpoints, imagine, I may have even mentioned this to you. So you see my screen here. Just imagine this whole screen was blank. In fact, I can do this. All right. So there's my screen. Imagine that you took your screen and vertically I cut it into 12 slices. That's what we see that's in white from here to here. That's what you have. You can apportion those 12 slices any way you want. What do I mean? I could have 12 things that each took up a slice. I could have one thing that took up all 12 slices, two things, six slices, two things at six, slices each, six things, two slices each. Get what I'm saying? Now, if I go over 12, so if I put in 14, it's going to put the first 12 on one line and take the other two and put it down to the next line. So everything that you work with in here is based off of some kind of a number of 12s. All right, so it says each breakpoint was chosen to comfortably hold containers with widths that are multiples of 12. Now, you can combine things in here. So you can combine small, medium, large, and extra large, etc. If I set something for small, and that's all I set, then it'll be small and beyond. If I set it for medium, it'll be just for medium and beyond. Now you may have noticed, because I didn't do anything special on mine, and you notice that when it got small, and I mean small, that it's stacked. That's what it's supposed to do here by default. All right. So you can read this if you have an interest. Okay. Notice, it says since Bootstrap is developed to be mobile first, we use a handful of media queries to create sensible breakpoints. Guess what? You know media queries. You at least know enough about them that you can take a look at some of the stuff they've put in here, and it should make sense to you. All right. Containers. This is a little confusing. Almost everything that you will create inside of Bootstrap, you'll create inside of a container. Sometimes it'll be one container, or you may have containers within containers. All right. And you'll notice that there's container and there's container fluid. What's the difference? Imagine right here, just imagine for a second, that everything that we see here was just white space. And everything that we see here was just white space. That would be a container. With a container fluid, it takes up 100% of the screen. It's fluid. But you can just set it up as a regular container, which will put in its default margin and padding, etc., on the sides, top, and bottom. Well, you may not like this, but guess what? Here is the grid system, but you can work with grid in Bootstrap. You can work with Flexbox in Bootstrap. Just when you thought it was safe, and oh my God, I thought we wouldn't have any more Flexbox stuff. All right, well, yes, you can work with that in here. But the grid system is what I mentioned. So here they're showing 3 columns that are 4 wide each. And this is done really well. I mean, it's worth your time to sit and read through this. All right? I mean, if you want this stuff to make sense to you, and again, you might say, well, why is it that big a thing? I think that the best electronic portfolios, and I know we still have to talk about that with you guys, that I've seen are done with Bootstrap. And they just use the built-in classes to do almost whatever they want it to do. And once in a while, they might have to do a little finagling when they put in their own CSS. But other than that, They're just using the Bootstrap CSS. But like I said, I think at least it's pretty well in here, written pretty well. And here again, they explain what these are. You've already seen this. All right. But notice that when you're doing this, you say col-sm for small, col-md, etc. All right. Shows you how you can lay columns out. All right. We're going to look at some of this. Notice Bootstrap's grid includes 6 tiers of predefined classes. That's the ones we just saw. All right. And they've got tons of examples in here. All right. Columns, typically columns go inside of rows. So you make a row and the row has the columns in it. Why would you do that? Because maybe I want, under my nav bar, maybe I want something that's 3 wide. All right, so I have a row with 3 columns in it. But then underneath that, I want something that's 4 wide. So I make another row with 4 columns in it. Does that make sense? All right. And again, they explain how they work probably much better than I just did because I'm not spending a lot of time on this. I mentioned to you gutter area before. As it says, they're the padding between your columns. There's some utilities, and there'll be a couple that they'll talk about on the bottom. Notice, Flexbox options. Bootstrap is built with Flexbox, but not every element's display has been changed to display flex. All right, what does that mean? That means it's pretty Flexboxy, but not totally Flexboxy. All right, so if something doesn't appear to work, you come back here or you Google it. Some stuff on margin and padding. I'm not going to go through that. I think we talked about this in class, but on the off chance we did not. If I have 2 different things, so let's say that I've got 2 different images, let's say, and for some reason, I want one to show behind the other one. You with me? So I've got 2 images, and let's just say that I want the bigger one I want in the background, and the smaller one I want in the foreground. All right? Then I take the one that I want in the foreground and I give it a higher, what's called a z-index. The higher the z-index, the more towards the foreground it comes. The smaller the z-index, the more towards the background it goes. All right. And then finally, again, a little more on CSS grid. All right. So now we've hit getting started, we've hit custom, we've hit layout. Let's look at content. All right. Reboot is kind of like reset, if you want to use that. Typography, this is fairly important, the stuff that's in here. I use this all the time. Notice we've still got our H1, H2, H3, etc. All right. So they show you how you can set those up in here. Does that look any different? To me, it doesn't. Still H1s, H2s, H3s, etc. There is a special kind of font that you can use that's called a display font. Is that important? Not really, but if you look on the screen, that's what we have here. Sometimes you just want something on a page to stand out in a certain way, and that's one way that you can do it. All right? If you take a paragraph, and you know what paragraphs are, if you give it a class of lead, it becomes bigger. That paragraph is bigger by default than the rest of the paragraphs. Usually it'll be the first paragraph that you put in something that you give lead. You can do your typical stuff of underlining, overlining, etc. All right, there's block quotes. This is all stuff you've talked about and learned already. All right. Working with lists. Nothing else new there. Images. A lot of people like these. All right. If you put image fluid in there, it tries to make your image fluid. So in other words, it's designed to make it grow and shrink as the size of your browser window grows and shrinks. All right. Thumbnails. All right. It says to give an image a more rounded look. with a 1 pixel border. There is a border around this that you may or may not be able to even see. All right, aligning images, etc. Now, a key one that's in there they haven't talked about yet, but you can also round images. And when I say round them, and I mean literally make it round, or like we did, because remember we did some of that stuff with the border radius. It's done pretty much the same way. All right, tables. We've talked about tables. You've seen stuff. Let me close that. On tables before. So if I take this, again, just to show you this, and I'm going to put it into the file that I've been working on here, and I'm going to remove the form, but I'm going to keep the nav bar in here. So I'm going to remove this, because I think this, as much as anything else, so there's tables. Now I'm going to remove the class equal table. All right, and save it. And then I'm going to go and look at this in live server. Now that's pretty obvious what that's doing. All right, now I'm going to go back into that again, and I'm going to add back my class equals table. All right, and again, that should be pretty obvious what you get by just saying class equal table. Now there's other things that are in here. For instance, you can put any of these colors in. You could make a table that looked like that. To me, that looks terrible, but you could do that if you wanted to. All right, there's striping. So if I just add table striped, so if I come back into the same table that we put in here, and after table, we say table striped, and it doesn't matter which order you put these classes in. But if I put it in like that, and I come back and look at it, now I get the zebra striping. All right. Again, what's nice about this is I get a lot of different stuff. You can have the hover look like this if you want to. You can change the color on that. Notice how it looks in here. You can highlight an active row in the table if you want to do that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can work with in here. All right. Figures, as it says, so when you're working with images, this is probably what I wanted to show you before. All right, no, don't have it in here either. So, but there's a rounded property, okay? So we've done getting started, we've done customize, we've done layout, we've done content, we've done forms. I wanted to look at one thing on components. I thought it was in there, but it's not. All right. Helpers. I don't know if there's anything in here we really need to talk about. You can look at that yourselves. Utilities, same thing. I don't know if there's really a lot in there that we need to look at. So I want to do a search in here for this. All right. If you go out, so this is the docs, and if there's some examples that are in there, okay? So for instance, if I go out to the examples, so this was just under this, and there's an examples. Okay, so if you click on examples, they've actually got working stuff in here. So you look at this, and I wanted to show you something with a Jumbotron because I wanted you to see what it is. Notice there's sticky footers. There's the Jumbotron. All right, that's a Jumbotron. So with an example button in it. All right, so a Jumbotron, typically if you're going to have one, you put it at the top of the screen. Now, in lieu of a Jumbotron, instead of that, I put that slideshow in there. I could have had something like this, and you can change the background color, you can change the text color, you can put images in here, you can put images and text, or just text like they have, you can put in buttons, you can format this so it's centered, etc. But what they have with a lot of sites is you have a Jumbotron at the top. All right, that's what I wanted to mention to you. I didn't put one in here. All right, so if you would please bring that back up again. So you got this email from me this morning, and it just says, good morning, we will go over this in class today, and it's Alfano's Bootstrap 5.zip. All right, So I'm going to give you this, and I'm also going to give you, this is a working copy, what I'm going to ask, and all I can do is ask. All right, but what I'm going to ask, I did not staple these on purpose, in case you want to be able to go through them yourselves. There is a stapler over there, so at the end of class, if you want to staple, you can. I don't know, everybody has two of them, or this must be the other one here. So what is in there, and I'm going to run off because I thought I had another copy and I don't. And I just would like a hard copy while I'm working on this. So where is it? That's it. Yep. Now you might look through that, and some, most, maybe all of that almost may not make a lot of sense to you, and that's okay. All right. But what I gave you, just so you know, because I'm going to use the same one, is this Alfano's Bootstrap 5. So it's an empty index.html file. It's empty. And you've got these images. I'm not going to go over any of those, but you've got these. I manually went in and resized some things that were in here. All right, just so you know. And I don't know why I was having a problem yesterday with this, but I just wanted you to see this. And if you look at this right now, it doesn't look very good. That Alfano's actually does have a logo. How do I know that? Because when I went out and put in here, close that, we shouldn't need that anymore, come close. And I put in Alfano's Pizza, and I clicked over to here. No, oh, of course it won't let me in because right now I'm. If I go on the regular Rankin network, I can't get to Facebook. All right. There it is. You can see how big it is. When I tried to scale it down, it didn't scale very well. But you can at least see what I've got there, okay? All right. The rest of them are pictures of people or they're pictures of food, okay? With the pictures of, I think with the food, I think it was, I took those from Pexels or Unsplash, I don't remember. And for the people, I just took them from Google Images, just so you know that. All right, so let me grab my copy of this. And believe it or not, this pretty much is your homework for the Bootstrap. So we're doing it together right now. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to open this folder up. In fact, do I have any codes open? Yes, I do. I'm going to close every version of code I've got open, and I'm going to open this up with code. So if you would, please open it up with Visual Studio Code. There's only the one file in here, so we're going to start putting stuff in. As I told you before, we've got two choices here. We can come in and manually do the old bump and grind where we put in this tab and add that stuff. I'm not going to do that. All right. So again, I'm going to go back to getbootstrap.com. I'd like you to do the same. And under getbootstrap.com, all right, click on the Get Started button that's here, which brings us to the introduction. Go down about halfway or so until you find the starter template. Copy the starter template to your clipboard. Go back into Visual Studio Code and paste that in. All right. Now I am going to use option 1 here. So this thing that says or use option 2, I really don't need this. So I'm just going to cut it. You don't have to do that. But to me, it didn't make a lot of sense to leave that in there if I'm not going to use it. All right. I'm taking for granted that right now, let me do a word wrap on here. I'm taking for granted that now stuff like this, again, we're not worrying about the integrity and the cross origin, but everything else that's in that head section makes sense to you. All right? Because we've talked about it. Bless you. Like I said, the integrity and the cross origin we didn't talk about. Bless you. But we've talked about everything else that's in here. I'm not going to save, or do anything right now with this. It's totally fine. I did put one style of my own in here, so I'm going to put that in right now. We don't have to do it in this order, but I am. I'm just going to put in right here. I'm going to put in a style tag. Bless you. And it's only got 3 lines in it. So I'm going to say dot carousel inner. We're going to look at what all this means in just a bit. And width 100%, max height 500 pixels, and I'm going to put in here the exclamation point important here, which means override if necessary. That's all the CSS right here. This is all the CSS that we need, other than the Bootstrap CSS. Okay? And we're going to put in the carousel, we're going to put in all this stuff in just a bit. All right? So there's not going to be a whole heck of a lot in here as far as, like, we don't need this H1. I don't want it to say hello world when it runs. That makes sense? So I'm just going to remove that. Then I'm going to go back to get Bootstrap, and I'm going to go down to components here, and I'm going to find the Nav Bar. All right. And I could use this one and just remove stuff. What else is in here? I could use this one. I could use this one, etc. All right. In fact, I think that's the one I used. I don't remember. So I'm just going to grab this one. It's the one, let's see. As you start perusing your way down here, it shouldn't matter which one we choose. It really shouldn't. We're going to work on it anyway. Let's just grab the top one so there'll be no problem. So I'm going to copy this. So I grab the top one here that's right under supported content. This top one, I copied everything to the clipboard. And we want to put that literally right underneath our body here. So if I save this and bring it up in live server, it now looks like this. And again, yeah, it says Navbar, but when I get it down to 100% again, it looks like this. All right. Now we want 3 links on ours. We want home, we want contact, or I'm sorry, home, about, and contact. All right. And just so you know, I found something interesting yesterday. Don't ask me why, but especially when I'm at home working, I can sometimes get a little goofy, and something hit me. Hey, is there a pizza Lipsum? And lo and behold, there is. Not only is there but look what they did. Kind of what you were asked to do. They took a picture of a pizza, they used the opacity so it didn't show as much, and they made it into a background image. The only reason I'm telling you that is what I'm going to have you do for, not for now, but for your practice test. We're doing the home page. I'm going to ask you to make any changes you want to make in it, but I'm going to ask you to try to implement the About page and the Contact page by using Bootstrap features and functionality. All right, so I can come down here. I just looked at it a little bit yesterday, but not much. So all toppings or toppings and filler. No, I just left it at all toppings. So if I do 5 here, come on, make my pizza. There it is. So you get all this stuff, and there are a lot of pizza ingredients and stuff in here. I just thought, if you're going to be doing something with an about anyway, it sounds better than Lipsum, Coriolis, all that other junk. At least they're actual words that are in here. All right. It's just filler anyway. Okay. So going back then into this right here, as I mentioned, I want 3 things in here. So there's my home. So let's look at this. All right. Let's look at the whole way the whole nav bar is set up. Nav bar, This is the expand thing that's in there. So it's supposed to expand or contract as the size of my browser window expands or contracts. Set it up by default for a large screen. Have the nav bar be light with a light background. Again, as I mentioned to you before, you can change any of those. You can make that primary, you can make it secondary, you can make it warning if for some reason, or error if you wanted a red background. I don't know why you do that. Maybe, Rankin's colors are red and white, so maybe that would be a reason for doing something like that. All right. So I kind of like it as I go on to put the dark here. You don't have to do that. You like the light, keep it at light. All right, you're not turning this in. Now, this right here where it says Nav Bar, see that? Right there? That we're going to change. Why? Because I don't want it to say Nav Bar. That's your tagline or your logo or whatever it is you want to call that. All right? The other thing too is, you may or may not have noticed, if you look up on the screen here, whoops, if I go back and run this again, where is it? There it is. All right, not too much in there right now. I think we all agree with that. But when you take a look at it, it's also, everything's kind of pushed. In other words, everything that's in there is almost taking up the entire width. Would you agree with that? All right, why is that? Well, we already talked about it. This says class equal container fluid. See this? I'm going to remove the slash fluid from here. I'm going to save and then look at it again. And you can see already, to me at least, it looks a little nicer. Now, you may not agree with that, which is totally fine. That's your right. So you can leave it the way it is if you want to leave it the way it is, or you can change it. All right. But again, I'm following my own notes in here. So I've got a class equal nav bar brand. And then we've got the href underneath it. I'm going to be hitting enter a lot. You don't have to do this. I'm only doing it because I want to show you stuff that I'm entering and where one thing starts and where one thing stops, for lack of better words. All right. So I'm going to say for the href, whenever you click on the logo or your brand name, you should always go to the home page. Regardless of where you are, you should always go there. So I'm going to say href equals, so right there I'm going to put in index.html because that's my home page. Now, what makes it nicer for me right now is it's the only page I have. All right, but what I'm going to ask that you guys do when you're doing your pre-test, which again, you say, I don't want to do it. Well, I'm going to give you some stuff for the pre-test that's going to help you with the test. All right, but in there, you're going to be adding more pages. You can always start with this page and copy it over to 2 pages too. All right, if you wanted to do that. So under this href right here, I'm going to hit enter right here, and I'm going to hit enter here. All right, because I want everything to kind of stick out. I don't want nav bar in there. I don't want that. What do I want? I want my image. So I'm going to say in here, img source equals, well, under images now, I've got a thing called logo.ping. All right, so I want that. And because I'm a good little programmer, I'm going to put alt equals, and I put Alfano's pizza logo, like that. And I'm going to close that. Oops, close that. Now, if I save that and look at it, I now have got that. All right. Well, and that's totally fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it the way it is. But I do want it to say Alfano's Pizza by it. Okay. And what I did not put any extra kind of formatting there, but I put it in a span tag. And I just put here Alfano's Pizza. And the reason that I put that into a span tag right there is just in case later I decide I do want to do some formatting with it. So it's in a span tag, so I could give that span a class or an ID if I wanted to do that. Now, why didn't it show? Yeah. but I didn't do anything special to make it work before. Oh, I know why. It is. It's because since I put it in a span, it's not having the stuff in here that you would normally have. So I'm going to go back just so I can see it. And I'm going to change this from dark to light. Again, you want to do that, do it. If you don't want to do that, don't do it. There it is. Alfano's Pizza. Okay? All right. Now, taking a look at this, again, I don't want a search bar in here. So I'm going to remove everything that's in there for the search bar. So it's down a ways. It's in here someplace. How do I know? I can right mouse click, or I do a Control F and type in search. There it is. So it's that form. So I'm getting rid of that form that's in here. I got rid of the form. I'm going to go back and look, and my search bar is now gone. All right. So going back and looking at this, now I'm going to jump down to here, and I'm going to look at that button. Again, I'm doing this because I want you to understand a few things. So I'm hitting enter all the time here because I want you to see everything that's going on in here. So in other words, I mean, I'm hitting enter a lot here. You can see this. All right. So what do we have? The button has a class in there of Navbar toggler. When you've got something that says toggler, that means it's going to go on and off based on a condition. I believe what that's doing is that's when we highlight something with our mouse, the color changes. All right. And data bootstrap toggle equal collapse. And basically what this is all going to end up doing between what you see right here in this button and what you see in here, all right, it's going to make sure that we've got our hamburger menu. So when it reaches a certain width, that the menu options are going to disappear. All right, they'll be replaced with the hamburger menu. All right. So going down then to this div that's here, in this div, this is where basically the nav bar is. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And look up on the screen here because it's kind of important. Notice how the ID is nav bar supported content. Everybody see this? It's in blue. If I want this to work, that's the same name I've got to give it right here. ID nav bar supported content. If you copy the stuff in directly from Bootstrap, you'll get that. We could have changed that. We could have called it Navbar anything, just Navbar, or whatever. But this has to be the same as this for all of this stuff in here to work. All right. Then we've got our unordered list. And let's start taking a look at what's in there. You already know how an unordered list works. There's nothing new in here except, notice that we've got our ARIA content. I'm telling it to here to go nowhere because I'm already on the home page. That makes sense? All right. And then we've got another one here underneath it. I'm going to change this one so that instead of saying this, it says about. All right. And then I don't want this drop down. So I'm going to get rid of this whole thing in here with a drop down. On my machine, yours should be the same numbers unless you've changed yours, but it's that whole drop down thing that you see here. Okay, we could keep that if we wanted to. For instance, we could have a thing on, let's just say, careers at Alfano's. And maybe you could click there and maybe we've got something about medicals, stuff that we offer. We've got stuff about tuition reimbursement, vacations, etc. But I don't want that, so I'm just going to remove it. Then I don't want this one to be disabled, so I'm going to remove the word disabled there. Make sure you keep the double quote. And I'm going to change this so that instead it says contact. But I want to make sure it's set up just like the one above it. So class equal nav item A, class equal nav link. All right. And then I'm going to hit enter here. And I'm going to say href equals £. Now, you all know this already, but I'm saying it anyway because I'm trying to be complete here. And that is this. Oops. When you start looking through here, you're going to change this so that will have about.html in it, and that will have contact.html in it. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. What you oftentimes see is instead of having a 3-page website like this, you have what's called a SPA, which is a single-page application where you can just keep scrolling down and everything. Basically your home page would kind of disappear and it would be replaced with your about page, which would kind of disappear when you kept scrolling, and then your contact page would show. All right. We're not going to get into that kind of stuff right now. All right. Now for the UL, on mine at least, let's see. Come on, where are you? All right. Now I want to see if this will work because it didn't look like it did when we did this before. So I've got here UL collapse. Where is the other one? Is there another one here? Div class equal collapse. Nav Bar collapse. There's a lot of stuff. There we go. There, UL. I don't know. When I did this before and I put in this in the UL, it's on line. I'm on line 39. When I added here ML dash auto, all right. When I added that and I saved and went back, this was right justified. It's not working now. I'm not sure why. All right. But it does on mine. I mean, if you look at mine at the finished product, it is right justified. And if I did something different, I don't know. You can take a look later at the code yourselves, okay? I don't want to get hung up on that, is what I'm saying. All right. So we're at the end of our Nav Bar section. So far, it doesn't look like much. Granted, we've got this. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to find the carousel. So again, I'm going to go back here to Bootstrap. Under components, I'm going to find carousel. And I'm going to give you the one that I chose. So I'm going to go down, and I didn't want slides only. I didn't want controls only. I went down to the with indicators. Everybody with me? I'm on the back of the first page. The stuff I gave you, it looks like around line 57. All right. Everybody's following, correct? All right. Just in case you fell behind a little bit, if you look up on the screen, you don't have to do this. Your program runs no better with what I'm about to show you. I'm going to show you something. It doesn't make your program run any better. But to make it a little easier to understand, what I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to put in a comment that says begin Nav Bar section. All right. Then I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go down to the end of my Nav Bar, which is here. And I'm going to say end Nav Bar section. You don't have to do that. But to me, it makes a little bit of sense to do that. All right. And now, underneath that, I'm going to have begin again, but it's going to be begin carousel section. And when I get down to the bottom of this, because I'm going to paste it in a minute, all right, then I'm going to put down there end carousel section. Again, your program doesn't run any better from doing this. I'm using it as a delineation. You understand what I'm saying? I think it makes it easier when I can tell where something ends and something starts. If you don't agree, hell, then don't put it in. It's totally fine. All right. So I want to get right here. So I'm on line 64 for me. So I'm at right underneath my comment for begin carousel section. All right. And if I'm going too fast, you got to stop me. So right here where we got the begin Nav Bar section, I'm going to go back to get Bootstrap. And with the with indicators here, I'm going to grab all of this code that you see right there. This code. So I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to come back in here. And I'm going to paste. And right now, if you run it, it's not going to look like anything. Look on the screen, please. We have no source. See that? So right now, it's not going to do anything. All right? Because we haven't told it to be using any source in here. We're going to do that right now. So let's take a look at everything that's in here. So we've got a div with an ID of Carousel Example Indicators. Maybe not the greatest name in the world, but the class we're using two classes here. Does everybody realize these are two different classes? One is called Carousel, one is called Slide. Make sense? If it was one class, where I am here on line 63, if it was one class, it would be either Carousel dash slide or Carousel underscore slide, or we'd run the two words together. We're not doing that, so it's two different classes. Underneath that div, and you do this a lot, is another div. All right? And it says here for the buttons. So type button. And again, if you find what I'm doing right here, hitting enter all these times to help, do it. If you don't do it. All right, so I'm setting up the buttons that are on there. So there's one. All right, there's the second. And these are those little dashes that are at the bottom that are allowing me to go from either slide 1 to slide 2, slide 2 to slide 3, etc. All right. And here's the last one. All right, now that we've done that, now let's start putting in our content. All right, so that set up the buttons for us. And someplace up here, it also, I believe, set up the arrows that are in there where you can click on the arrows. So let's go in here. Now, notice, please look on the screen. Would you agree? Class is Carousel Inner. Would everybody agree with that? Well, look up. Remember in our style tag, we did that Carousel Inner? Why? Because by default, meaning unless told otherwise, it's going to try to make the image the size it was, which was 1920 by 680 or something like that. I didn't want it to be that tall because it took up almost the entire length of the screen. If you want to see what I mean, then when we get done, just go up to that style and just comment that stuff out. All right. All right, so we're going down into our Carousel Inner right now, okay? So the image source, probably what you'd imagine. We're going to say images slash, and the first one is pizza1.jpg. The class is display block. Remember, by default, images display inline. All right, we're telling them to display block right here. Class equals D block. W100 means all 100%. All right. Now, you don't have to do this, but this is where I took it from, so I put this in here for the alt tag. Pizza photo by Ivan Torres on Unsplash. Okay. So let's take a look. I'm going to save this. And it may not even, oh, there it is. So that's what we've got. Granted, it doesn't look like much right now, but please look up on the screen. Please, everybody. Even if you're still typing, just for a second, stop. I'm going to grab this where we've got this max height in here. So I'm for right now, I'm going to comment that out. Just that part of it. Well, since it's in the style tag, I guess it wants CSS comments. Yeah, it does. And I'm going to save. And then, you see the difference? That's the difference between setting the height to 500 pixels Now it's taking up my whole screen. I didn't want that. So I went back in there and put max height 500 pixels. You can use an exact height in there. You can use percentages. You can use relative or absolute units. All right. And I'm not that smart. I just went out and Googled it and started looking at some examples. All right. So that's our first one. Okay. Now, to me, what I'm about to show you is the easy way. If you don't agree, don't do what I'm about to show you. I'm going to grab this image tag right here. See this thing? The one we just did? I'm going to copy it, the whole thing to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it in here, and I'm going to paste it in here. So I pasted it into both of those. Now I want to make my changes. So this becomes Pizza 2. This one was another Unsplash, but it was from Vitali. I can't pronounce his last name, but Chernopisky. Something like that. All right, and then the third one will be Pizza 3, and that one was from Alan Hardman. All right, I'll leave that up there for a second so that you can catch up. Let me just double check and make sure that's working now. There's our second one. There's our third one. All right, and I can go back and forth. I can either use the arrows up here or I can use my indicators. Okay? So that's where they are. Now, if you copy these from Unsplash, this is what you get. They say if you want to say thanks. So I put pizza in there because, again, thinking that if somebody is looking at it who's sight impaired, it would let them at least know what the picture is a picture of. Because if I'm sitting there and it's like, if I've got a reader for the blind and it comes back and it says, photo by Ivan Torres on Splash, I might be thinking, wow, that's supposed to be a picture? A picture of what? All right, so I just put the word pizza in front of all three of those. So again, if you do fall a little bit behind, that's why I gave you the source code. Hopefully everybody is able to catch up. I mean, it's 9:57. Like I said, I want to go no more than an hour or so on this because I want to give you some time to look at it. Plus, I'm not going to lie to you. I've got a couple things I'd like to do before my next class. All right. So if you've got all this, if we go down to the bottom, this stuff that's down here, this stuff is our previous and next. I believe that's the arrows that are on the side. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what they are. And again, you don't have to do this. It just, to me, it makes a lot of sense to do it this way because I can see what is being applied by putting them each in their own line. If you don't agree, don't do it. All right, button here, yeah, that's okay. Okay, a couple spans, good. All right, so we had our, well, I guess I somehow screwed that up because that should have been by our begin carousel section. Put a little bit of white space in there. So there's our begin carousel, and now we're at the end, should say end carousel section. Okay. You're missing
pages from lines 49. Oh,
yeah, they're two-sided. Yes.
There you go. I
was gonna say I didn't think you're missing anything. I watched. I love watching old episodes of Law and Order. Okay, and I was watching one a week or so ago, and this woman was a teacher, and one of her students wanted her car, so he murdered her. But unknown to him, she taped all of her lectures. It was the old-fashioned mini cassette tapes. So they found the cassette tape. Now the guy had kicked it and rubbed it, but they could still. And the guy goes, "That's all there is to it." And Lieutenant Van Buren looks at him and goes, "Did you turn the tape over?" And the guy goes, like, "Oh." And of course that was the rest of it. It's all right. So we're down to here. We're down to the end of our carousel section. If you remember, when we go back and we look at the whole completed project, we have now done this, right? And I know it doesn't look like much, but hey, it's a start. We got stuff in there, right? All right. So next we want to put in this. The calzones, the salads, the pizza sticks, etc. All right. And I promise that, when we get to about, I don't know, I'm going to go for pretty close to an hour and then we'll be done. If we don't finish it today, all right, I'll finish it tomorrow. But the thing is, if we finish it tomorrow, you've got all the code. All right. But we'll get as much done in the next hour as we can. So the next thing that I've got in here is, like I said, I want to put in that information. All right. And these, I think I used cards for these. I'm going to go check right now. So under components, I'm going to go to card. I didn't. All right. So you're going to have to do a little bit of typing. But the good news is, when you type in the first one, you're going to be able to copy them to the other ones. Did you hear what I said? All right. So we're going to do a little typing right now. Sorry about this. So what was this called? I don't think it even had a heading. We want to do this. All right. So I'm going to put my own heading in there because I didn't put one in, but I'm going to put one in right here because I've got, not there, because I've got my ending carousel. So I'm going to put in here, and we'll just call it begin food section or menu selection, whatever you want to say. Menu section. That's good. All right. And since I've got a beginning, and I'm going to have an end down here. All right. So I've got the beginning menu section, and then we'll do the ending one in just a minute. All right. So I mentioned to you this before. I'm going to say class equals container. Almost everything you do in this language is in a container. I'm going to put a little bit of padding on the top. No double quote there. PT, padding top, 4. Text, center. Know how we've always said text align center? It's text center here in Bootstrap. Can you still do it yourself in your own CSS with a text align center? Yes. Why would you want to? I mean, to me, one of the virtues of using Bootstrap is you're not writing a lot of your own CSS. And since you're not writing a lot of your own CSS, there's not a lot of your own CSS that you have to go and debug. All right. And again, if you don't agree with that, then just don't do it that way. So now I'm going to put in a div class equal row. Talked about this before. And again, as I've already mentioned to you, quite often when you do this, you end up with divs inside of divs. And sometimes these divs, all right, sometimes at least, they're going to be 5, 6 deep. All right. If you get in where you're 20 or 30 deep, you might want to start rethinking your design. All right, because there's probably a better way to do it. All right. So I'm going to come through here, and we're going to be able to copy this 4 times. We'll have to make some changes, but we'll be able to copy this 4 times, what we're about to do. All right. So div class equal col LG, which says, again, large devices and above. All right. H3, class equal MB-4. Somebody tell me, what does that stand for? margin bottom. So class margin bottom 4, and I'm going to put in here, what did I screw up? No double quote there. Here we go. So inside of here, I put in calzones. And underneath that, I have got my image. For calzones. Alt equal, again, this is calzone image from Google Images. For a class, it's equal to image fluid. Again, stretch, contract, expand as you need to. So image fluid. MB for margin bottom, 4, rounded. Don't think I spelled anything wrong there. Now, I played around with this. I wouldn't typically do what I'm about to tell you, but I did put a width in there. So I said width equal 100% and height equal 50%. And all I can tell you, if you say, why did you do that? I did it because it looked a little better when I did that. Now that's kind of a stupid reason, but it's an honest reason. All right. Then underneath this, I put in a paragraph with no special stuff in it. You can put anything in the world you want to put in here. Whoa.
You have
All right.
fluid spelled wrong in your class equals.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Yeah, it's not flood. It's class fluid. Thank you.
I thought maybe for a second.
Well, let's look at it, see what it looks like now, too. So I'm going to come here and get it back down to 100%. That is 100%. Right now, it's pretty big. And there's the verbiage. All right. And it's pretty big because remember, right now, there's only one of them, right? So it's taking up all 12 of those slices as best it can. All right, look on the screen if you would, please. This thing that starts here and ends here, see this? We're going to copy that and put it in 3 times. Don't copy the class equal row. You want to start here on my line 124, copy down to here, which is my line 137. Again, your lines may not totally jive with my lines, but I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to paste it. Now, I don't know if I put in 3 or 4, but we're going to see. See what I've got now? So I've got all 4 of those. So all I have to do is I have to change both the picture for each one and the writing for each one. Everybody with me? So I'm going to go back to here and I've already put in the first one, and that one's fine. So I'm going to go down to here, and second was salads. And please look on the screen. Notice I'm changing salads once. I'm changing salads twice. I'm changing salads 3 times. All right, and I'm going to put in a different write-up. It's the same write-up you've got. Except mine says without. It should say with meat. Did you notice here? I typed in our salads cannot, and it changed it to this. I didn't put that in. If that happens, you should be able to just do a control. I thought a control Z would work, but I'm just going to put cannot because all right, be beat. So I've now changed 2 of mine. And I'm just going to keep going back and looking at, well, it doesn't like my picture, so I'll fix that. I'm not worried about it. So what doesn't it like? Might be salad, not salads. Yep, that's what it was. All right. I'm just going to change the other 2, same way. So this third one was sandwiches, I believe. I'm on the bottom of line 143 in the right up here. And then the last one, which was pizza sticks, right? Yep.
For some reason, I'm more starving whenever I leave this class. That's it. I don't know why. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny, yesterday my wife wanted to stop at the Ross that's a place that's out in Wentzville. So we went by it. Now I almost smile every time I drive by the Alfanos. I've never stepped foot in there, so I have no idea if their food's any good, not good. So
I'll let you know this on Monday. I'm going there this weekend, I think.
you know, you could always ask them too, hey, you want a regular website?
There you go.
You show them examples of your work. All right, so I have changed all of mine. Let's see if it worked. And there's that. So on what I'm showing you, I'm down to line 169 on the stuff that, on the handout that I gave you, okay? And there's a total of what, 369 lines, so we're just about half done. But again, we're going to still be able to do a lot of copying and pasting. And if you look on the screen, there are ways you can set the background to this. We could have set the background color. I just kept, I liked the way it looked, to be honest with you. So I just left it the way it was. You may have noticed I bolded these too. All right. I'm sure there's things that I probably did not go over in the getbootstrap.com documentation that I should have. Maybe I went over things I didn't have to, but you know where all that documentation is right now. All right. So I'm now down to the end of my menu section, and I'm going to begin my family section. And again, if I'm going to begin it, I'm going to end it. And again, hopefully now this goes without saying, when you start doing this family section, notice that it starts on line 171 and it goes all the way to line 285. Did you hear me? I'm only going to do it once, and then I'm going to copy it. So I've got six of them in there. Then all I have to do is change the title, or the alt tag that's in there, the card title, and the card text. Okay? And if you look up on the screen, everybody, just for a second, please, again, this is from Get Bootstrap, and this is in the card section. All right? You can pick out any one of those that you want to. I would say that if you really want to learn this stuff and play around with it a little bit, when we get done, I would take what you've got, make a copy of your folder, and do whatever the hell you want to do with a copy. All right, but just keep your original so you have the original. If you don't agree, you're not going to do it anyway, so that's okay. All right. So I'm in my family section now. So again, if you're following along, I'm on line 172 in what I have here. All right. Why did that get changed? It did. Why is it doing that? Huh. I don't know why it's using that font. Okay. If you look up on the screen here for a moment, please, what you'll find, first of all, I cheated a little bit. I went and grabbed them from, they just, doing all this typing was driving me nuts. But my text for the family was not centered, so I added a text center class right there. All right, when I did that, I don't know why these pictures are appearing so big. I'm going to have to take a look at that, but they didn't before, but they are now, so whatever. But I'm down to here. And if I could just get you to stop for a second, because I just want to quickly go over this. If you look at this, couple things. I'm on the very last page that I gave you, the front of the last page, so line 289. Notice that this is, yes, we have a weekly newsletter, etc. And when you look through that, okay, and I'm looking at that, I thought that I made that a form, but I guess I didn't. It looks like it should have been a form. It's classes form control. I'm just wondering if that looks funky, because it seems to me like that should be a form in here. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'll have to go back. I've got a master at my house. But when you work with forms, again, notice form control, span, notice input group, button primary, etc. All right. So you can do whatever you want to do with that stuff. But the other thing I wanted to mention is when you look on the very bottom here, that last div is closing off the entire container. So make sure that last div that we started right underneath our nav section where we said div class equal container, I didn't end it till there because the whole thing is inside of my container. All right. And if I look at it, it appeared to look okay when I made it smaller. And I'm not saying it's gorgeous or anything, and it still looked like it was screwed up when I got to a certain width on here. Right there, that should have been another one down here, but I'm not sure why that is either. I'm sure it has to do with the widths. Okay, but if you make it smaller, so it looks fine on big screen, it looks fine on small screen, but it's that putting it in there on the medium that screwed it up. I may want to get rid of that medium that's in there. I don't know. All right, and I'm trying to figure out too why this is giving me that particular font type. So I put display 3 in there, but it didn't like it, so it just made it that. I don't know. If you put in what I put in, what I gave you, you should be okay. All right, finally, because I'm going to give you time to play with this yourselves. But before I do, if you look at the handout that I just gave you, this is the lab. Now, you've got a lot of it done already. Okay, create a one-page landing page for a local non-chain restaurant. You've done that. Use Bootstrap's responsive Nav Bar component. You've got that. Include the name. Well, you can add that at the top. I mean, I don't think that adding an H1 with the name of the restaurant is going to, be a bad thing for anybody. It says remember to apply the Nav Bar class. Yeah, that's in your header, so you've already got that. Let's see. Include a link to their full menu. You want to do that in the header, you can. All right. So where it says Alfano's Pizza, remember I showed you that before where we linked to it? I just Googled Alfano's menu, so you could do that. All right, include a link to them on Google Maps. Well, you can put that if you want to, you can put it in the header, or you can put it down in the footer. Either one is, I don't care. Give the header a light color background. Well, if you use the color light, it already is. Okay. The main, you can take what we've done and put that in a Jumbotron, but there's no sense in really doing that. But you can if you want to. You may be asked on your test for this next week, you may be asked then to use a Jumbotron. I don't remember. Okay. So in this main section, just try to weave some of this stuff in if you can. Does that make sense? All right. But even if you have if you've got what we've been working on and it's done and it looks pretty good, you're going to get credit for it anyway. But I'd like you to try this stuff because this stuff's all on the test. That's why. All right. So I'm going to let you play with this. It's 10:40. We've got about another hour and 15 minutes. All right. Don't worry. Monday we'll go over chapter 9 and 10 test. It's totally fine. I'm not worried about that. I didn't know how long this would take, and I was more concerned with getting you an introduction to this today. So tomorrow is going to be lab for the entire period. All right. Then on Monday, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to go over the chapter 9 and the chapter 10 test. After we do that, I didn't mean to, but evidently I lied to you a little bit in that we are going to go over chapter 20 because amongst other things, chapter 20 has in it Bootstrap. So there's a few things in chapter 20. I am going to skip 19 because that's on JavaScript and jQuery. But we will go over that. All right. And I will make sure that by Tuesday at the latest, if not Monday, I give you a pretest that again will have kind of the format of the way the test will be. You'll be able to work on that on Tuesday. Wednesday of next week, we will have your last test. So you get a chance on Monday and Tuesday to practice with this stuff. All right. And it's not going to be that different from the test you just took, except it's going to tell you to use Bootstrap. All right. And then we will, so by the end of next week, hopefully by a week from today, if some, around or either a week from today or a week from tomorrow, we'll start on the JavaScript stuff. Oh, the other thing is too is on Monday, because I'm supposed to do this, I'm going to have each one of you, it won't take long, come into where our offices are. If you don't know, I can show you where it is. And I'm going to print out when I get here a copy of your grades so far and a copy of your attendance record so far. No one is missed, so that really shouldn't be a big thing. All right, if you're here tomorrow and you're here Monday, Monday is the 20-day. Every 20 days, I've got to give you a work ethic grade. All right. So if you've gone out of your way, where you're walking around, okay, can I help you, et cetera, then you might get a meets expectations. Otherwise, or you might get an exceeds expectations, which is an EE, most people I give an ME for, meets expectations. You came here, you worked hard, you did the job, you went home. So if you get MEs, don't look at it that, oh man, I should have gotten an EE. If you want to know what you have to do for an EE, then you got to go above and beyond the call of duty. Finally, the last thing I wanted to tell you is I talked to Angie yesterday. She's feeling a little bit better. She said if there is anybody, she will be gone next Monday and Tuesday because she's going to a specialist to see a specialist for about her neck. But she is willing to come in here tomorrow, or she's willing to come in here next Wednesday if people have questions on Flexbox, or if anybody needs any help on anything we've been doing thus far. So let's just say that Mason here, I know he's got his homework turned in, but let's say he didn't, and he doesn't really want to talk to her during class. You can email her at Angie_Shelton at InsideRankin.org, and she is willing to try to come up with a time that she can work with you to tutor you offline. All right, so electronically tutor you. So if you're falling behind on homework or whatever, and you want some help, you can get a hold of her. All right, that's all that I had for today.